The galaxy was burning, falling one by one as planets were reduced to lifeless husks, their civilizations crumbling under the relentless advance of the Dread Legion, an extinction event, a force of annihilation that left nothing but silence in its wake. No plea for mercy was answered, no treaty honored, every battle ending in fire and ash. The Galactic Alliance, the coalition of the universe's most powerful species, had fought with everything they had, deploying the finest generals, the greatest tacticians, the most advanced weapons, but against the Legion they were nothing more than a dying ember struggling against the wind on the bridge of the Alliance High Command's flagship. A hush filled the war chamber, as leaders from dozens of races stared in silent horror at the holographic projection of the warfront, watching as the red tide of the Legion swept across the galaxy, erasing entire civilizations, while refugee fleets drifted aimlessly through space, filled with the terrified remnants of once mighty species. The silence stretched on, heavy with grief and dread, as the leaders cycled through every possible solution, only to realize that nothing had worked. The Legion adapted to every tactic, crushed every defense. They were not just losing, they were being erased from history. Then, finally, a voice broke the silence, weighted with both reluctance and resolve, as an elder from the Zeldar Dominion hesitated before uttering the words no one dared to speak. "We must seek aid from the humans." A ripple of unease swept through the chamber, as some flinched at the very mention of the species, exchanging wary glances. Humanity was dangerous, unpredictable, forged in chaos and conflict, a species that had carved its history from blood and fire. Their world, Earth, was a crucible of war, a place where nature and their own kind had tried to destroy them, yet they had endured, adapted, survived, thrived. "They are too reckless, we cannot control them," one counselor argued, while another added, "They are brutal, their methods are unsettling." But the elder simply shook his head. "And yet they have survived when others would have fallen, and we are losing this war." And so, with extinction looming, the council had no choice. A diplomatic envoy was assembled, tasked with the most dangerous mission of his life, to convince humanity to fight for a galaxy that had until now only viewed them with fear and suspicion. As his ship neared Earth, he recalled the stories, whispers of human wars that had reshaped entire continents, of weapons so devastating they had nearly wiped themselves out, of soldiers who fought not just to win but to utterly break their enemies. When he was finally granted an audience with the leaders of Earth's military command, he laid out the grim reality of the war, describing in vivid detail the horrors of the Dread Legion, the worlds that had fallen, the billions who had died, the desperate plea of the Alliance. The humans listened, asking few questions, their expressions unreadable, until one of them finally spoke. "If we agree to fight, we take full command of the war effort, no interference, no negotiations. You give us complete control, or we don't fight at all." The envoy felt a chill run through him. Full control was unprecedented. No species had ever made such a demand of the Alliance, but then again, no species had ever been like humanity. He hesitated, knowing how difficult this would be to sell to the council, but when he looked into the human general's eyes, he saw something that made the decision for him. There was no fear. The humans were not intimidated by the Dread Legion, not daunted by the odds. They did not see an impossible war, they saw a challenge, and they intended to win back. At the War Council, the debate was fierce. Many resisted the idea of relinquishing control, others feared what humanity might do once given unchecked authority, but there was only one alternative: extinction, and so one by one they agreed. And at that moment the tide of the war began to turn. Humanity, the most unpredictable force in the galaxy, had just been unleashed. As the Galactic Alliance stood on the brink of total annihilation, their desperate plea for salvation had been sent out to a world long feared, a species whispered about in cautionary tales. Humanity. The transmission was sent across the stars, carrying with it the weight of entire civilizations. Now, as the message raced through the cosmos, the fate of the galaxy rested in the hands of those who had never before been part of the great galactic stage. Earth was a planet of contradictions. It was a world where innovation flourished, where wars had raged for centuries, and where resilience had been forged in the crucible of endless conflict. Unlike the utopian societies of the Galactic Alliance, Earth was a realm where survival was earned through hardship, through ingenuity, and through unyielding determination. The planet's history was soaked in blood, but also in triumphs of the human spirit. When the transmission from the Alliance reached the Terran Council, the most powerful governing body of Earth's unified military and political forces, there was no immediate response. Earth's leaders were not hasty. They analyzed every detail of the distress call, dissected the message with calculated precision, and debated in secret chambers whether this was a war they should fight. The question was not one of morality. Humanity had long since abandoned the notion of fighting wars for the sake of honor or righteousness. Instead, Earth had learned through centuries of warfare that every battle had a cost, and every cost had to be weighed. The Legion was a force unlike anything the Galactic Alliance had encountered, but to Earth, they were nothing new. The humans had fought horrors before. Some even worse than this Legion. They had battled among themselves with weapons that could scorch entire continents, had waged conflicts that redefined their understanding of war itself. They knew what it meant to face annihilation and emerge victorious. Yet, humanity was not without its own agenda. If they were to fight, they would not do so as saviors. They would not risk their forces, their technology, or their strategies without a price. Earth did not believe in alliances built on desperation. They believed in control. The response from Earth was swift and decisive. The message was sent back to the Galactic Alliance. But it was not a plea for diplomacy. It was a statement of intent. If they were to fight, they would fight their way. They would not answer to the command of the Galactic Alliance, nor would they follow their rules of engagement. If the Alliance wanted salvation, they would relinquish full control of all military operations. Otherwise, their war was already lost. The message sent shockwaves through the Galactic Alliance. No species had ever made such a demand. No civilization had ever dared to dictate terms to the Alliance in such an absolute manner. The High Council debated for days, their discussions filled with fear and uncertainty. Could they truly hand over control to a species they barely understood? Could they entrust their very survival to beings known for their brutality and unpredictability? But the alternative was extinction. The decision was made. Humanity would have its control. The moment the Galactic Alliance agreed to humanity's terms, the gears of war began to turn. Earth's vast military-industrial complex roared to life, mobilizing at a speed that left the Alliance in awe. Within days, entire fleets were being prepared, war machines were activated, and soldiers were summoned from every corner of the planet. Unlike the warriors of the Galactic Alliance, the humans did not march with solemn dignity. They did not see this as a noble war. To them, war was not about honor. It was about victory, and victory demanded ruthlessness. The first human ships arrived in Alliance space just weeks after the agreement was signed. The vessels were nothing like the sleek, elegant ships of the Alliance. They were colossal, armored behemoths built for total warfare. Every ship bristled with weapons, every hull reinforced to withstand the worst of the battlefield. There was no artistry in their design, only function. These were ships meant to kill, to dominate, to crush opposition with overwhelming force. As the first Terran fleet entered the designated war zone, the reactions among the Alliance were mixed. Some were relieved to see their new allies arrive. Others were horrified by the sheer scale of Earth's war machine. This was not the response of a desperate species trying to survive. This was the arrival of an apex predator preparing to claim its territory. The soldiers that emerged from those ships were equally unsettling, clad in heavy armor, carrying weapons that seemed more like siege cannons than firearms. They moved with precision that spoke of a lifetime of discipline and training. These were not warriors who sought glory. They were killers who had perfected their craft. Humanity wasted no time. They did not wait for ceremonies or introductions. They did not engage in diplomatic courtesies. The moment they arrived, they analyzed the battlefield, identified the Legion's weaknesses, and moved to strike. The first human-led assault was not a battle. It was an extermination. The Legion had long fought the Alliance, pushing them back with relentless aggression, overwhelming their defenses with superior numbers and tactics. But against humanity, they encountered something far more terrifying. They faced an enemy that did not retreat, did not hesitate, and did not fear them. Human warships moved with ruthless efficiency, striking deep into Legion-held territory with a precision that left the enemy reeling. They did not fight defensively like the Alliance had. They did not attempt to hold the line. Instead, they carved through the Legion's ranks, disrupting supply lines, severing command chains, and obliterating entire fleets before they could react. On the ground, human soldiers demonstrated an even more terrifying aspect of their warfare. Where the Alliance had fought to protect, humans fought to annihilate. Every engagement was swift and brutal. They did not seek to hold ground. They sought to break the enemy's will. Human special forces infiltrated Legion strongholds, assassinating high-ranking officers, sabotaging critical infrastructure, and leaving entire battalions leaderless and confused. The Galactic Alliance watched in stunned silence. They had expected warriors. What they got were executioners. As the battle progressed, Whispers spread among the Alliance ranks. Fear of the Legion had dominated their minds for so long, but now a new fear was taking root. The fear of humanity. For the first time, they questioned whether they had made a deal with saviors or something far worse. The Legion, once an unstoppable force, now found themselves being hunted. Their forces were scattered, their fleets in disarray, their once coordinated offensives reduced to desperate acts of survival. Humanity did not relent, they did not slow, they pursued the Legion with a single-minded determination, driving them back into the abyss from which they had come. As the dust settled on the first major battle, the Alliance leaders convened once more. The war was far from over, but for the first time in years, they saw a glimmer of hope yet. With that hope came an unsettling realization. Humanity was not just fighting this war, they were mastering it. And the Alliance had no idea what they had unleashed. The battlefield stretched across the void of space, a vast and endless sea of darkness speckled with the glow of distant stars, but those stars seemed dim compared to the raging fires of war. The Legion had been dealt a brutal blow by humanity's arrival, but they were far from defeated. The next stage of the battle was about to begin, and the galaxy braced itself for what came next. The Galactic Alliance had never seen such an overwhelming victory before. After centuries of barely holding the line, after watching planet after planet be reduced to rubble, they had finally seen an enemy pushed back. But it was not their own forces that had done this, it was humanity. The species they had long feared, long dismissed as reckless and unstable, had become their saviors in mere days. News spread across the Alliance like wildfire, stories of human warships cutting through enemy fleets with ruthless efficiency, of infantry that fought without hesitation, and of strategies that left the Legion broken and scattered. There were celebrations among the civilians who had been living in fear for years, but within the ranks of the Alliance military there was something else, unease. For while they had been saved, they had also witnessed something terrifying. The humans had not fought for survival, they had fought to dominate. The difference was subtle but clear. The Alliance had always fought defensively, struggling to hold what little ground they had, but humanity had struck with the precision of a predator on the hunt. They had analyzed, dismantled, and destroyed the Legion without mercy, and now, as the dust settled, the question loomed over the heads of every Alliance leader: what would happen if humanity ever turned on them? On Earth's warships there were no celebrations, no cheers, no victory speeches, just preparation. Every commander, every soldier, every strategist knew that the battle had only just begun. The Legion had been caught off guard, but they would not remain vulnerable for long. They would regroup, they would adapt, and they would come back with a vengeance. The humans intended to strike first. Inside the command chamber of the Earth Fleet's flagship Iron Dominion, the top human commanders stood around a holographic display of the battlefield. The Legion's scattered forces were marked in red, while humanity's fleet moved like a disciplined storm, ready to consume its next target. Admiral Catherine Voss, the woman in command of the human forces, studied the data with a cold, calculating expression. Her short-cropped silver hair and sharp, blue eyes made her look as if she were carved from steel. "The Legion will not retreat for long," she said. "They underestimated us once, they won't do it again. We have a small window before they regroup and attempt a counterattack. We need to push forward while we have the advantage." Beside her, General Marcus Holt, the leader of humanity's ground forces, crossed his arms. "The Alliance is still hesitant about our tactics. They don't understand that we're not here to fight a war their way, we're here to end it." Boss nodded. "Then we won't give them a choice, we move now." Meanwhile, on the capital world of the Alliance, a meeting of its highest leaders was taking place. They sat in a grand circular chamber, representatives of countless alien species, each one more uneasy than the last. "We must discuss what we have witnessed," said Chancellor Loras, a reptilian being with golden scales that shimmered under the room's artificial lighting. "The humans have proven themselves powerful allies, but they have also proven themselves dangerous." The room murmured in agreement. Counselor Velith, a tall and slender being with bioluminescent patterns across her skin, leaned forward. "We asked them for aid and they delivered," she said. "But at what cost? We have seen their methods, we have seen how they fight. There is no restraint, no hesitation. Do we truly believe that once the Legion is gone, humanity will simply step aside?" Silence fell over the room. Then an older voice spoke. It belonged to Grand Strategist Zell, one of the oldest and most respected members of the Alliance. "We have fought the Legion for centuries and failed," he said. "In mere days humanity has done what we never could. We must decide what we fear more, their strength or our own destruction." The debate raged for hours, but no matter how they argued, the truth was undeniable: they needed humanity, even if it meant dealing with the devil. Deep in the uncharted sectors of space, the remnants of the Legion's fleet gathered. Warships drifted like wounded beasts, their once mighty formations reduced to ragged clusters of survivors. On the bridge of the Legion's command ship, a monstrous figure loomed over a massive tactical display. Supreme Warlord Zarek, leader of the Legion, bared his fangs in fury. His clawed hands dug into the metal railing before him. Humans. He growled the word, dripping with hatred. The battle had humiliated him. His forces had been shattered, his dominance challenged. Never before had the Legion been forced into retreat. Never before had they faced an enemy so relentless, but they would not run forever. "Prepare the second armada," Zarek commanded. "Summon every warrior, every ship, every weapon at our disposal. We will drown them in fire and death." A deep guttural roar echoed across the command deck as his officers obeyed. The war was far from over, and this time they would not hold back. As humanity prepared its next strike and the Legion gathered its remaining strength, the galaxy stood on the precipice of an even greater battle. The Alliance watched with bated breath, unsure whether they had gained a savior or unleashed an even greater monster. The war was changing, and soon the true test of humanity's might would begin. The battle had begun to shift. What was once a desperate struggle against the relentless force of the Legion was now turning into something else entirely. For the first time in recorded history, the unyielding enemy that had crushed countless civilizations under its iron boot was showing signs of faltering. The Alliance forces, who had spent so long in retreat, were finally witnessing the unthinkable. The Legion was on the back foot. But this shift had not come from any breakthrough in the Alliance's technology or strategy. No, this was the work of a force unlike any the galaxy had ever known. Humanity had entered the war, and they were changing everything. The moment the humans had taken command of operations, the Alliance forces had been thrown into a whirlwind of coordinated precision. The humans moved with an efficiency that the Alliance had never seen before. Their strategies were not simply about defense, but about dismantling the enemy piece by piece. While the Alliance had spent decades trying to survive, the humans had spent mere weeks crafting a war plan that would turn the tide in their favor. Their first moves had been surgical strikes against key Legion supply lines and command hubs. The Legion, which had always functioned as a single-minded war machine, found itself suddenly disrupted. Their supply convoys began to disappear. Their forward bases, once considered unbreakable fortresses, were crumbling under the relentless assaults of human special forces. Even their methods of communication, which had allowed them to coordinate their attacks with terrifying precision, were now compromised. For the first time, the Legion was no longer the hunter, it was the prey. The Alliance had always considered war to be a battle of numbers and firepower. If you had the larger fleet, the stronger ships, the better weapons, you won. But the humans fought differently. They didn't just attack, they dismantled. They disrupted supply chains, eliminated enemy commanders, and spread misinformation through Legion communication networks. They fought as though war was not just about destruction, but about strategy, deception, and above all, total domination. Their soldiers moved like shadows, hitting hard and fast before disappearing. Their ships struck from the darkness of space using tactics that the Legion had never encountered before. Their weapons, though seemingly crude in comparison to the advanced technology of the Alliance, were devastatingly effective. The Legion, so used to overwhelming its enemies with brute force, had no answer for this kind of warfare. It was an enemy they had never faced before, one that didn't just fight to survive but to win at all costs. But it wasn't just physical combat where the humans excelled. They understood something that the Legion had never considered. War wasn't just about weapons and battleships, it was about fear. It was about making the enemy doubt their own strength. Wherever human forces struck, they left behind a message. Sometimes it was a symbol, sometimes a phrase, sometimes just silence. An absence that spoke louder than any words could. The Legion, who had never known fear, was beginning to experience it for the first time. Reports started to emerge of entire Legion battalions abandoning their positions, not because they were losing battles, but because they no longer knew what they were fighting against. Their enemy was invisible, unpredictable, and merciless. The humans understood the power of psychological warfare. They knew that an enemy that feared you was already halfway defeated, and so they played that card masterfully. The real turning point came when humanity launched its first major offensive against the Legion's primary stronghold in the sector. It was a fortress unlike any the Alliance had ever seen, a massive, nearly impenetrable structure housing thousands of Legion soldiers and commanding vast fleets. The Alliance had attempted to take it before, and each time they had failed miserably. But the humans didn't just attack it, they took it apart from the inside. First they severed its communication lines, no messages could go in or out, then they cut off its supply chains, forcing the Legion to rely on dwindling reserves, and finally they launched a full-scale assault. But not in the way the Legion expected. Rather than attack the fortress head-on as the Alliance had always done, the humans infiltrated its small elite squads, penetrated the structure, eliminating key personnel and planting explosives at crucial structural points. By the time the Legion realized what was happening, it was too late. The fortress collapsed in on itself in a chain reaction of explosions. The remaining Legion forces, leaderless and cut off from reinforcements, were easy prey for the waiting human fleets. The Alliance had never seen anything like it. A battle that should have taken months had been won in mere days. But victory did not come without a price. The humans fought with an intensity that the Alliance had never seen, but they also suffered casualties. Many of their soldiers fell in battle, and though they pushed forward without hesitation, the cost of their relentlessness was evident. The Alliance watched in silent awe as human medics worked tirelessly to save the wounded. Even as the battle raged on, there was no time for mourning, no time for hesitation. The war was not over, and the humans would not stop until it was. Yet, for all their victories, the burden of their sacrifices weighed heavily on them. Their commanders did not celebrate, their soldiers did not cheer, they simply moved on to the next battle, knowing that the war was far from over. With the fall of the Legion's stronghold, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. The Alliance, once on the verge of total collapse, now had a fighting chance. But the humans knew better than to assume the war was won. The Legion would adapt, they would learn, and they would come back stronger. So humanity did what they did best: they prepared. Every battle had been a lesson, every loss a calculation, every victory a stepping stone to the final goal: total and absolute victory over the Legion. For the first time the Alliance saw what it truly meant to fight like a human. And for the first time the Legion saw what it truly meant to lose. The war was far from over. But humanity had made one thing clear. The tide had turned, and there was no going back. The void of space was a graveyard of shattered warships and smoldering wreckage. The Legion, once an unrelenting force of destruction, now found itself struggling against the might of a species it had never truly understood. The initial battles had been brutal, but they had only been the beginning. Humanity had committed itself fully to this war, and in doing so had reshaped the battlefield into something the Legion had never encountered before. The Alliance watched in stunned silence as human forces expanded their grip on key territories where the Legion had relied on brute force and overwhelming numbers. Humanity had countered with strategy, adaptability, and an unwavering ruthlessness that shook even the most hardened warriors. The human fleets moved like predators through the darkness, striking without warning, vanishing before retaliation could be mounted. Every counteroffensive the Legion launched was met with precision and a cold, calculated brutality that left their forces scattered and demoralized. The war had evolved into something else entirely. The Alliance had spent centuries developing defensive strategies, hoping to contain the Legion's spread, but humanity refused to fight defensively. Their approach was different. They did not aim to contain the Legion. They aimed to break them, to dismantle their war machine piece by piece, to make them bleed. Every victory came at a cost, but humanity accepted this with grim determination. They did not hesitate, they did not falter, they pressed forward. Relentless and unyielding. The Legion had never faced an enemy willing to fight to extinction. That was humanity's greatest weapon: their endurance, their refusal to back down even when faced with impossible odds. In battle after battle, the Legion's commanders watched as human forces tore through their ranks, adapting in ways that defied logic. They used tactics that no other species had ever dared. Where the Alliance would have retreated, humans advanced. Where others would have hesitated, they struck with merciless efficiency. They took every lesson from history, every war they had ever fought, and they applied it with terrifying precision. Alliance officers who had once doubted humanity now found themselves looking to them for guidance. They studied their methods, their relentless will to win. Human commanders did not lead from the safety of distant flagships. They were in the thick of battle, on the front lines, shoulder to shoulder with their troops. They understood loss, they understood sacrifice, and they wielded it like a weapon. Their presence alone inspired those who fought beside them, while striking fear into the hearts of their enemies. The war was no longer about survival, it was about domination. Humanity had set their sights on total victory, and they would settle for nothing less. They pushed deeper into Legion territory, their fleets moving like a storm through the darkness. Worlds that had once trembled under the Legion's rule now saw a new force descending from the stars, a force that did not come to conquer but to annihilate their oppressors. The message was clear: humanity was here, and they were not leaving until the war was Over. The Legion's desperation became apparent. Their forces, once a tide of unrelenting destruction, were now disorganized and scattered. Supply lines were severed, communication networks shattered. Humanity had learned the art of war not through simulations or distant skirmishes but through centuries of conflict, through wars that had shaped their very nature. The Legion had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. Human ground forces struck like thunder, their mechanized units advancing through ruined cities, through desolate wastelands, through the very heart of Legion strongholds. The enemy had never seen warfare like this before. Humanity's weapons were not just advanced. They were brutal, efficient, devastating. Exosuits turned individual soldiers into walking tanks. Drones moved like swarms of mechanical predators, striking with precision. Artillery turned entire battlefields into firestorms, and above it all, human warships rained destruction from the skies, tearing through enemy fleets with relentless fury. The Alliance watched in awe, struggling to keep up. They had fought this war for so long, believing that survival was the only option, but humanity had shattered that belief. They had shown them that survival was not enough, that to win they had to fight with everything they had, and the Alliance did. Inspired by their new allies, they fought harder, more ferociously than ever before. They adapted, they learned, they pushed forward, no longer fearing the enemy that had once seemed invincible. But the cost of victory was steep. Human losses mounted with every battle. The Legion, desperate and cornered, fought with the savagery of a dying beast. The war was no longer a matter of who was stronger. It was a matter of who would break first. Humanity refused to break. They endured through pain, through loss, through the horrors of battle that would have shattered lesser species. They pressed forward, their determination a force of nature, their willpower unshakable. Then came the final stand. The Legion had retreated to their last stronghold, a fortress world surrounded by an armada of warships. It was their last hope, their final attempt to turn the tide. The Alliance hesitated, unsure if they could win such a battle. But humanity did not hesitate. They prepared for the assault, their forces assembling for what would be the deadliest battle of the war. They had come too far to stop now. They would see this through to the end, no matter the cost. The battle began with fire and fury. The sky above the Legion's world was consumed in chaos, as fleets clashed in brutal combat on the ground. Human forces stormed the enemy's defenses, pushing forward through sheer determination. The Legion fought with everything they had, but it was not enough. Humanity had come to end this war, and they would not be denied. The battle raged for hours, for days, until finally the Legion's defenses crumbled. Their commanders fell one by one, their war machines burned. Their stronghold was no longer a fortress. It was a tomb. As the dust settled, the last remnants of the Legion surrendered. The war was over. The Alliance, once on the brink of extinction, had been saved, and it was humanity who had delivered that salvation. They had done what no other species could. They had turned the tide of a hopeless war. They had broken an enemy that had once seemed unstoppable, and they had done it not just through superior firepower, but through sheer will, through determination, through the unshakable belief that they would not be defeated. The galaxy would never be the same. The Alliance knew this, the other species knew this, and the Legion in their final moments had known it too. Humanity had arrived, and they had rewritten the rules of war forever. The war had reached its boiling point. The Legion, once thought to be an unstoppable force, was now fractured, desperate, and on the verge of collapse. Humanity, with its ruthless efficiency and cold, calculated strategy, had pushed them into a corner, but like any beast with its back against the wall, the Legion was about to lash out with everything it had. Across the war-torn sectors of the galaxy, remnants of the Legion forces scrambled to regroup, their once imposing fleets now reduced to scattered armadas, barely holding together under the relentless onslaught of Earth's war machine. For every battle they had fought, humanity had answered with overwhelming force, leaving nothing but smoldering wreckage in their wake. The Alliance watched in a mixture of awe and horror. They had seen war before, countless conflicts between interstellar civilizations, but nothing like this. Humanity didn't just fight wars, they ended them. Every engagement was a masterclass in brutality and precision, each strike more devastating than the last. Admiral Keldros of the Zerthan Dominion, one of the few remaining high-ranking commanders of the Alliance, stood aboard the bridge of his battlecruiser, staring at the tactical map. The human fleet was advancing again, carving a path through the heart of what remained of Legion-controlled space. Unbelievable! He muttered to himself. They never stop, they never slow down. Beside him, the Alliance envoy assigned to humanity, a Zalari named Valen, nodded in agreement. Because they can't afford to, he said grimly. To them, victory is the only option. Their history is proof of that. Keldros exhaled slowly. He had read the reports on Earth's past wars, the way humans had torn each other apart for centuries before they ever looked to the stars. The very idea of extinction was burned into their psyche when they fought. It wasn't just for dominance, it was for survival. And now, that same survival instinct was being turned against the Legion. The enemy had launched a desperate counteroffensive, sending what remained of their elite forces in a last-ditch effort to regain lost ground. Enormous warships, the size of cities, lumbered through space, their hulls bristling with weapons. Swarms of fighters and drone ships filled the void, determined to crush the human fleet in one final clash. But humanity was ready. Aboard the UNS Vengeance, one of Earth's most powerful dreadnoughts, Admiral Ethan Graves stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the data feeds stream in. "They're making their move," his tactical officer reported. "Throwing everything they have at us." Graves smirked. "Good, let them." He turned to his communications officer. "Send the order, begin Operation Hammerfall." Across the battlefield, human ships shifted formations. They didn't meet the enemy head-on in a chaotic brawl. No, they had a plan, a carefully orchestrated trap that had been set long before the Legion even realized it was walking into one. Humanity's fleets divided into multiple strike groups, each one moving with precision. The larger capital ships acted as bait, drawing the enemy forward while hidden battle squadrons flanked from multiple angles. Within moments, the trap was sprung. Massive railgun rounds tore through Legion warships, slicing them apart like paper. EMP blasts shut down critical systems, leaving enemy vessels dead in the water. Stealth bombers weaved through the chaos, planting explosives at weak points before vanishing into the void. The Legion, once the dominant force in the galaxy, was being dismantled piece by piece. On the bridge of the Legion's flagship, Supreme Warlord Carvax roared in fury. How are they doing this? They are lesser beings. They should be broken by now." His second-in-command, a reptilian brute named Vaktar, bared his teeth in frustration. "They are relentless, my lord. We strike them down, and they rise again. Their losses mean nothing to them." Carvax slammed his fist onto the command console. "Then we will burn their world. If we cannot defeat them in battle, we will erase them from existence." He gestured to his remaining ships. "Prepare the Planet Killer. We will wipe Earth from the stars." It was a desperate, monstrous act, the kind of final gamble only a dying empire would attempt. The Planet Killer was the Legion's most devastating weapon, a superweapon capable of reducing entire worlds to ash. But the humans knew it was coming. From the shadows of deep space, a single vessel emerged, a sleek, black warship unlike anything else in the human fleet. It had no markings, no visible weapons. It was a ghost, a whisper in the dark. On board, a small crew of elite operatives prepared for their mission. Commander Alex Mercer adjusted his helmet, his expression unreadable. "We've got one shot at this," he said. "The Planet Killer can't be allowed to fire. We get in, we disable it, and we get out. Understood?" His team nodded. They were the best of the best, hand-picked for missions like this. No fanfare, no medals, just the cold, brutal work that kept humanity alive. Their ship closed in on the Planet Killer, using advanced stealth technology to slip past enemy defenses. Once docked, they moved quickly, cutting through Legion soldiers with silent precision. They reached the main reactor, planting charges along critical points. The countdown began. Mercer tapped his communicator. "Charges set. We need extraction now." Back in space, human forces redoubled their assault, drawing the Legion's attention away from the infiltration team. The battle raged with unimaginable intensity, but humanity refused to yield. Then, in an instant, the Planet Killer erupted into a massive explosion, its core destabilized beyond recovery. The Legion's last hope was gone. On board the UNS Vengeance, Admiral Graves allowed himself a rare smile. "It's over," he said. "They just don't know it yet." Across the battlefield, Legion ships hesitated, their morale shattered. Some tried to flee, others fought to the last breath. But it didn't matter. The war was no longer about survival, it was about extinction. Humanity had won the battle. Now they would win the war. The battlefield was silent, not the calm of peace, but the eerie stillness that followed absolute destruction, the quiet aftermath of a war that had rewritten the course of history, the end of an empire that had once cast its shadow across the stars, now nothing more than drifting wreckage in the void. Remnants of a force that had terrorized entire civilizations reduced to glowing embers of broken warships and scattered life pods floating aimlessly in the wake of humanity's final, decisive blow. The once mighty Legion, the terror of the galaxy, the undefeatable scourge that had brought countless species to their knees, was no more, their fleets obliterated, their armies shattered, their war machine dismantled piece by piece with ruthless efficiency by the very species they had once dismissed as insignificant, as weak, as nothing more than an afterthought in the grand hierarchy of galactic power. But now, as the remains of their warships drifted lifelessly in the cold abyss, it was clear to all that they had made a grave mistake, one that had cost them everything, for humanity had done what no one else could, what no other empire, no other alliance, no other species had even dared to hope, and now, standing on the precipice of a new era, the galaxy was left to reckon with the undeniable truth. Humanity had not come to save them, they had not come as liberators or as saviors. They had not fought this war for the sake of justice or morality, or for the lofty ideals of interstellar unity. No, they had come for one reason and one reason alone: to eliminate a threat, to ensure that the Legion would never again rise to power, to erase their enemies so thoroughly from existence that even the memory of their dominance would be reduced to nothing more than whispers in the void, and they had done so without hesitation, without mercy, with a calculated and brutal efficiency that left even the most battle-hardened commanders of the Alliance in stunned disbelief as they watched the final remnants of the Legion crumble before the relentless advance of Earth's war machine, a war machine that had been tempered in the crucible of centuries of conflict, honed by a history of war and struggle and the unyielding will to survive no matter the cost, a war machine that had turned the tide in mere weeks, achieving what generations of strategists, generals, and rulers had failed to do in decades. And now, as the last echoes of battle faded into silence, the survivors of the Legion, once proud and merciless conquerors, now cowered before the species they had so grievously underestimated, surrendering en masse, throwing down their weapons as human ships encircled the final remnants of their fleet, their once imposing warships now reduced to nothing more than derelict husks drifting helplessly in the void. And there was no dramatic final stand, no desperate last battle, no grand act of defiance. For the Legion had been broken completely, utterly, irreversibly. And as Admiral Elias Voss stood aboard the bridge of the UNS Triumph, his expression unreadable, his gaze fixed on the wreckage of what had once been the most feared fleet in the galaxy, a transmission request flickered on his display, a request from the Alliance leadership, and with a weary sigh, he accepted, watching as the holographic image of High Chancellor Vekan materialized before him. The alien leader who had once carried himself with the quiet dignity of authority now looking weary. Shaken, his voice heavy with disbelief as he uttered the words that so many had thought impossible. "It's over, the Legion, they were unstoppable, we spent decades preparing for their return, and now, in a matter of weeks..." He trailed off, shaking his head, struggling to comprehend the reality before him, before finally asking the question that had plagued every strategist, every commander, every leader who had borne witness to the storm that was humanity's war machine. How? And for a long moment, Elias remained silent, considering his response, before finally answering in a voice devoid of pride or arrogance, simply stating the truth. "We fight wars differently than you do." And Vekan, though he had already known the answer, nodded slowly, solemnly, for he had seen it firsthand, had watched in both awe and horror as humanity reshaped the battlefield, had witnessed the brutal efficiency with which they executed their strategies, and now, as a tense silence stretched between them, neither the Chancellor nor the other Alliance leaders had any further words to offer, for they had seen what humanity was capable of, and now they had to come to terms with what that meant for the future, because the galaxy had changed, irreversibly, undeniably, permanently, for the war had not just been a battle for survival, it had been a crucible, a defining moment that had forged a new order, one that now revolved around the species that had once been considered reckless, dangerous, unpredictable, the species that had proven themselves to be not just warriors, but the single most decisive military force the galaxy had ever seen, and now, everyone knew it, across the Alliance, news of the victory spread like wildfire, reaching every world, every colony, every station, and the reactions were as varied as the countless species that inhabited the stars. Some celebrated, relieved that the nightmare was finally over, that the Legion, the great and terrible force that had threatened them for so long, was finally gone, while others watched with quiet apprehension, with an uncertainty that gnawed at the edges of their thoughts, wondering what would come next, for if humanity had done this to the Legion, then what else were they capable of? What else lay within the depths of their terrifying potential? And yet, despite the unease that lingered in the minds of many, one truth became abundantly clear. Humanity did not seek conquest. They had no interest in ruling the galaxy, no desire to impose their will upon others. Their focus was singular, their purpose unwavering. To ensure that no threat like the Legion would ever rise again. To safeguard not just themselves but the future of the stars. And as the final remnants of the war faded into history, humanity turned their attention to rebuilding, offering aid to the Alliance planets that had suffered under the Legion's attacks, deploying their engineers and scientists to work alongside their alien counterparts, restoring what had been lost. And yet, despite their assistance, despite their willingness to help, there was always an unspoken truth lingering beneath every interaction, a silent acknowledgement that would forever remain in the back of every mind, that the Alliance had asked for humanity's help, had called upon them in desperation, and had learned, in the most unforgettable way possible, that when humanity fights, they do not fight to survive, they do not fight for glory or conquest or dominance, they fight to win, and that is why they will never be underestimated again.